And so like the separation of husbands, I actually I spoke to I think I can say this. I spoke to Kevin.
So you spoke to Ruby's husband, Kevin Franke.
Or I was emailing. Yeah, I emailed with him a couple of times. And I mean, that was the exact formula that he presented that happened to him. These men's groups, the separation, the triangulation, the just the complete and utter destruction of sense of self and self-worth and understanding of how you fit into your family, like the family dynamic.
Welcome back to This Week in Tyranny. Hello, ladies. My name is... Just kidding. Right? Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me. I'm your host, Konrad Rogoz. It's episode 120 of This Week in Tyranny, March 23rd, 2025. Sunday, after 1 p.m. Yeah, that little intro, just joking. I laugh because I was looking at my YouTube demographics breakdown of my recent videos. I did the last one about the Ruby Franke story, and it's like 85% women or more. Of course, it may not just be me. I know the Ruby Franke story. It's about a mom and a family. It's a woman-oriented topic. It's a woman-oriented audience, right? But really, should that be the case? Why would the interest in the issue of parenting and child abuse be 85 to 15%? Why shouldn't it be 50% men and 50% women, right? So that's why we explore the man in the Ruby Franke story today. Okay, I've been waiting, looking forward to this episode. Okay, this is my forte right here. We're going to talk about men. Episode 1 was about Jody Hildebrand and the societal institutions. It was about the Mormon church as a whole, replacing the patriarch in the family. So we already laid that groundwork for this deep dive into male psychology that we're going to do in this episode. We've already kind of set that up. Now, episode 2 should totally blow this whole story into a whole other realm, okay? Trying to get to what has really been unexplored in other coverage. There's been so much coverage. I'm trying to have something different here. And the reason it hasn't gotten the coverage is from the male perspective, the perspective of the men in the story, is because they're not in the center of the story. They're on the side, right? Kevin Franke, Ruby Franke's husband, Ruby Franke's currently doing 4 to 30 years for aggravated child abuse. Her husband was not in the picture at the time. He was not in the center of it, at least. But in this docuseries, he was in the center because he's not in jail. So I want to put that spotlight on him. And thanks to that recent docuseries, Devil in the Family, The Fall of Ruby Franke, we got some footage here that allows us to do that. So this is from episode 1. We're going to start it off with some footage so people can see this. I see that this is not on YouTube, so let's see this.
She filmed everything. And I was so uncomfortable with it.
Okay.
You're home. Okay, well, I turned the camera on just long enough so everyone can see.
Hi, everybody. Back to work now.
I know.
Never cease.
So,
When I came in the door, wherever Ruby was, the camera was.
many of you in the last several videos have said, can we hear your kids play more? Can you please sing Christmas carols? We'd love to see your family play some Christmas music or sing some Christmas carols. I'm waiting for to share conversation with you.
I'm listening to you talk. Sorry. I like to hear Ruby talk.
I'm cutting all of this out. Help me out here.
I don't know where you want me to come in. Okay, start over again.
All of a sudden, it wasn't enough to just interact with her. I had to interact with the camera.
Here, I'll kick in. Ready? So, one of the traditions that we do...
And she would pull it out. She would say, Kevin, this camera is millions of people watching us.
I had a neighbor come over to the house once, and she was standing
she really wanted me to be the perfect husband. The even-keeled but strong patriarch of the family. But I wasn't. I am a nerd through and through.
I don't know. Okay.
I was very insecure with who I was. And I was willing to change, to become somebody that somebody else would appreciate and love. We met in August of 2000. She had about 5 guys trying to court her interest. And so I decided to play dirty. Inside of her closet, she had this big table. All of the rows vertically were all of the attributes in a guy that she was looking for. She had physical attributes like athletic. She had a ton of attributes that were related to our religion and our faith. And then along the top, all of the columns were the boys. My name was on there. I had a column. And so I'm just furiously taking notes, and I went home and I studied hard. I studied that stuff harder than I did my schoolwork, I think. We were engaged by October of 2000, and we were married by December 28th, 2000. Getting married was the ultimate symbol that somebody else was willing to commit their eternity to me. And once I had it, I was willing to do anything to keep it.
It wasn't enough just to interact with her, I had to interact with the camera. So that's the effect of the 8 Passengers channel becoming so huge as it did. That reality of a camera always recording them, it becomes almost like another person living in the house. Imagine 3 people sleeping in one bed, right? If you ask me, it's another man, that camera. It's another man living with them. This is the replacement of that masculine authority in the family. And maybe authority is not the right word, but certainly the male presence. It replaces Kevin Franke. And this, you see, is when he stops feeling like a man. Okay? The consensus of the masses, right? That approval, okay? All the likes, all the subscribers. That approval of Ruby Franke as a symbol of the Mormon mom, that's her husband now. That's what happens in this story. It's the unspoken thing in this whole story, and you could see it written all over him in that footage you see. Right now, I got sympathy for him because this isn't his fault, right? He was born into a culture where there is a very large, heavy central authority, Mormonism. Non-religious Western culture has it too. It's just not as looming and not as heavy, but it's there. So this popular vlog issue thing, it would have been an issue for any man. But this is not the insurmountable obstacle. This is not the cause of any of this. There's an insurmountable obstacle in this story, and it is that Kevin's sense of self-worth and security came from the outside. It was external. Self-admittedly, he was always a nerd, and he didn't feel confident in being a nerd, right? And this documentary shows he wanted Ruby, and you could see Ruby in her older photos. You know, she's got a lot of qualities that a nerd would like, right? She has the popular girl look, and if you watched episode 1, you could see in the early days she seems very warm. She, She always had these abusive tendencies, but no person is 100% evil, right? So, again, I'm just trying to humanize this family a bit. She had the extroverted personality as well, right? Okay, so that's what Kevin's into. Kevin wants that. But as everyone knows, and this documentary shows, a young woman is going to have her choice of potential partners. She's going to be able to take her pick. So Kevin finds this table. He finds Ruby's chart of qualities in the man, right? And you can actually see it. It goes down the list. I don't know how they found this, but it's there, right? And this is how Kevin, he won the race. This table, this chart, guys, if you think this is something weird or crazy, every woman has this chart. Every girl is going to have a chart like that. Maybe not physically. Maybe she doesn't have a literal Excel spreadsheet saved on her desktop. But women have this. They have it. And Kevin just kind of saw behind the curtain, right? He sees what the rest of us don't see. But what he didn't see is the guy didn't see the forest through the trees. He saw only what was required to get what he wants. But what was shown to him was a lot more. The problem, the real insurmountable obstacle that set all of this into motion, the whole horrific horror story of Jodi Hildebrand and what happened later. The whole start of it, the beginning, was that Kevin compromised his principles in order to find a wife. That's, the episode's over, everybody can go home, right? That's kind of the point. Now, I'm not saying it's wrong to play up certain qualities to impress a woman. I think that's natural. I'm not even saying it's wrong to change who you are. A lot of those qualities, I've changed over time. I don't think there's anything wrong with changing in order to get a desired result if you're changing for the right reason. But when you put on a face, right? When you portray something that's really different from what you truly are, although you have a right to do it, everybody has the right to do that, but you're covering up holes that are going to get bigger and bigger and bigger over time, and one day they're going to come to the surface as huge problems. And that's what always happens. There are no shortcuts with things like that. People got to be compatible for real. Now, what he didn't see is that chart was showing him Ruby's values, Ruby Franke's set of values, what she believes, how she sees the world, how she sees herself. When those values do not align with people, there's going to be conflict and suffering. He said himself, Kevin, you heard him say that he was willing to do anything to keep that marriage. That's already an inversion of identity. I know it's a beautiful thing, and it's easy for me to say I'm not married, right? But I can say that definitively. You cannot be willing to do anything to keep your marriage. You got to be willing to do anything to stand up for your principles, your values, okay? Because what happens when what's good for your marriage conflicts with what's good for your children? Where is your guidance coming from there? This is the issue, right? This is that conflict you run into. This is why it's so important to be self-defined, to understand your values and principles. Now, Ruby Franke's values and principles, her values were very basic on that chart. They were not personalized. These are not some individuated, lofty virtues. It was very surface level. It was the look, the image, the projection. Does he have siblings? What the family's going to think? 6 inches taller than me, right? So, but really, when you think about it, it seems like their values were similar, because Kevin also really valued that external approval. So it just goes to show you that shared values are only a good thing when those values express the inner spirit and inner convictions, and not the external satisfaction of an internal anxiety. This is what I see, what society expects, what our parents want, what our friends will think, all of this stuff, how it's going to look on social media. This is all internal anxiety. You're trying to satisfy some kind of unsureness within. It's an internal anxiety. But anyway, they get married, and now their oldest child, Chad, he ends up being everything that Kevin wanted to be.
I think just the main reason was the audience was girls my age at the time. And I think they just found me fun and attractive. And I'm not complaining.
I was living vicariously through him. He was everything that I wish that I was when I was a kid. Confident, handsome, great at sports, the heartthrob, and the comedic relief. And that's important. Ruby knew that. And she exploited it.
You exploit it.
Absolutely, I did.
Let's see if we can show how thick this water cache is.
All of that money, all of that payment came for one reason and one reason only. My kids.
So smile. Now look at it like, look at the money.
So in all this, I really appreciate Kevin's honesty, right? This is not an attack on Kevin Franke. This is valuable information here. But the way this unravels, it's just so sad, actually, because this is what happens in the world. Is it's like every guy who isn't alpha, like 95% of people in the world, they want to be the alpha. But then when you are the alpha, if you have all these attributes, okay, like you're this kind of Chad Franke type of character, it seems like you don't even get to enjoy it. Like you end up getting pigeonholed, boxed in into being the symbol or object, and you're seen for that, right? This is what weak masculinity does. Like feelings of male inadequacy, that's what that does. What it does is it turns even the alpha male, even alpha qualities, into like a symbol, a monolithic object, okay? Something that doesn't have a whole lot of freedom. It just has to portray that object. I know if women are watching this, that's going to maybe sound familiar, say, hey, this is the same thing for women, right? But of course there's a reflection of this, right? But this applies to men, and here's how. This thing that men want to be, it's really a caricature of masculinity, and that's the problem. And it's not just the women to blame for this. It's not their fault that they like the tall guy and the muscles and you know, the jawline. We do this to each other, because if you aren't confident in who you are as a nerd, if you don't develop qualities that are actually you, but you feel good about them, you feel good enough to present them, you know, your intelligence, your quirky ideas, your socially awkward behaviors, if we can't own that and we can't find a way to like ourselves anyway, and just look in the mirror or look at a woman and say, hey, I'm not Chad, but goddamn it, I could show you a good time still anyway. If we can't do that, then what else are we leaving the woman to search for but the alpha? Like, we're pushing her towards the alpha because we're so obsessed with it. So it's not really the height, the jawline, then the muscles that are that guy's main magnetic attribute, but it's really just his confidence in himself. He gives the validation that, yes, that is the thing to aspire to. That's all it is. It's all mental. That's not to say physical things don't matter, right? They do, but you got to play the cards you're dealt, right? You got to do the best with what's possible for you, you know? The worst of all of this is you see a guy like Chad, and he seems to have, the guys like this seem to have an underdeveloped sense of self, which is sad. But I'm sorry to judge. I am, because I don't know the guy. I don't know for sure. But when he talks, it sounds very surface level. I know he's young, right? And not that it's bad to be surface level. It's just that you don't get the kind of individuated expression from him and the kind of personality that I see from Sherry Franke. Maybe I'm wrong about this. Maybe I'm biased. But this is a real phenomenon right here, that really attractive people, they seem to not be spectacularly unique. They seem to not be as interesting. It's really like one or the other. You know, it's an interesting topic, but also another layer that complicates that topic even more. It may be that when you got a mom with abusive tendencies, the oldest son often tends to be the most broken and obedient child. Again, I'm not a therapist, right? I'm not a psychologist, but I've seen this happen. The parents have the energy and the time to impose their will and their vision on the child. And this happens often. The oldest child gets it the worst. It's very unfortunate, but true. But again, in Chad's defense, he did rebel. He wasn't just obedient. The guy got his bedroom taken away for kissing all these girls and then set it on video. Hell yeah, Chad. Like, great, So I apologize for my personal judgment on the guy. I just find it interesting, and I'm going to bring it up. As for his dad, though, which the episode focuses on, we can say these things definitively. I can say definitively about him. They're not judgments; they're observations. You could see it. He revealed enough of himself, Kevin Franke, in this documentary, to be able to say all these things that we're really just getting started with. And only now, really, we're getting into episode 2. So we went backwards a little bit. 3 episodes of my breakdown and 3 episodes of the actual story. They don't line up one to one, but there does seem to be this connection. And as we get into episode 2, a lot of this it does focus on the man, just the way I do it. It focuses on their marriage. But I'm just gonna roll the footage here. This is, remember, around that time Ruby's family got brought into Jody's program. Okay, so this is a little bit later.
Why did Ruby like it so much?
Because it validated things that had been bugging her for a long time. To be honest, we were pretty lost. And Ruby believed that this was the roadmap back to the place that we both wanted to go to. And she sat me down and she said, I am concerned about our marriage. And I'd like to invite you to join a Connections men's group.
Welcome to Connections Classroom. Thank you for joining us. We're going to invite you to learn how to...
It was all online, and Jody hopped on, who wants to get us started? And so then some guy said, I'll check in, and then started just going down a list of stuff. It was a support group for addiction. Addictions to what? Everything.
Lust, the energy of lust, is not completely connected to sexual encounters.
Most men were in there because of addiction to pornography. There were men who would get in and they would report, I've relapsed. And Jody would say, how long are you going to keep choosing that? Do you realize that you're losing your family? And this poor guy is sitting there, dejected and miserable. And Jody would then add to this and say, look at Kevin. He makes choices every day that are responsible. And he stands up and he's a man. And it felt so good. And I began to look forward to it. Because all I wanted was praise. You want to know what felt the most good? Was seeing the way that my wife was looking at me.
How was she looking at you?
The way I'd always wanted her to look at me.
Good morning, Kevin. I'm making you breakfast. You probably won't eat.
There's too hard.
I'm making breakfast for her. She's still upstairs sleeping.
Over time, there was a shared passion for one another. Our relationship felt better. There was so much less conflict. We both felt like there was purpose again.
And a lot was mentioned there, but let's make it simple what this is all about. sex. It's about sex, and sex is what controls men. It's just the way it is. If we lived in a society where you would have the most sex as a man, but you would have to care about freedom, then we would already have freedom. The world would be free already. Governments would have already been abolished everywhere, or they would be working exactly as the Constitution said. If that was like what was rewarded in society, whatever was rewarded with getting laid, that's what would happen. That's the world we live in, guys. That's just the way it is. Even if the hierarchy of power did still hold on, it would be in such a state where it would be working. It would at least be cautiously respectful of the people, right? Because men would be willing to risk their lives for that. Well, think about what men are willing to risk things for. So that's always been known. So traditional authoritarian control systems used to do this. They used to outwardly control sexuality. The church did it. All kinds of churches did it through their system of morality, getting the women to believe in the system of morality, waiting till marriage, right? Withholding that until there's some kind of a connection. Because now marriage is a beautiful thing between two people, but as far as the system is concerned politically, marriage is a corporate union. It's a tethering to the state, right? Now, even before that, the royalty or patriarchy in general used to do this through arranged marriages or kingly decrees. There's this whole, ancient concept of that law where the king could have any woman in the nation just through, brute force and rule and his wealth and control. And that's it. And it was controlled who you could marry with and have relationships with. This is just a continuation of that. It's not just in the Mormon system. Sexual control is all over the world in very sophisticated, complicated things. It's not even enough for this episode, but I touch on it a bit, right? Because the docuseries touches on it as well, talking about love and lust. You heard it. The way love is presented here by these people, it's indicative of not just Mormonism, but most modern thought. It's this idea that lust is selfish and love is selfless. So when kids clean up after themselves, then I guess that means they truly love their parents, right? Because they're not doing it for themselves. But when they get excited to hug you or snuggle with you, somehow that would be not love because it's for their own enjoyment. Or if you want your partner to compliment you, that's not love for some reason, right? Because it's selfish. As you can tell, I completely reject this dichotomy. I reject the way love and lust is divided, because for me, love is actually about giving and taking. It's both. Both are aspects of it. It's not just giving to the other person. It is complementary, giving and taking. And lust is part of that. And there is an inherent selfishness to love. It's both love and lust, because the thing about romantic love is I explain it this way. You want the best for the other person, but you want to be the reason for that. So it's both. And if you think about it, that's how it should be. It should be like a battery that charges itself. So it's selflessness and selfishness. But people want to take selfishness out of the equation, because then they can be controlled. The other way, you can't control them. Well, actually, you can. But the division is what controls us, having this split. And this is what Jody was capitalizing on. She's not the first one to do it, right? She's just doing a breakaway version of that. But this hustle of using sex to control men, that has been the government's greatest tool of control from antiquity. Because men aren't afraid to get killed in battle. They're not even afraid to go to jail. Not really. Even the nerds, like Kevin calls himself a nerd, these nerds will get into a fist fight with a stranger or operate dangerous machinery with no safety equipment. They'll risk their lives. Men aren't really scared of risking their life. What men are scared of is a life without warmth, getting shut out, without sex, and not just sex, without affection and warmth. This is what men are afraid of. Okay? Now, women look for not that as much as they look for stability, dependability, reliability. Rightfully so, they should, right? However, the power structure is set up in a way that, as a guy, if you don't run the rat race, and if you're actually working toward a better world for your children, your stability is threatened. It brings you down. It's harder for you to compete on that chart, on Ruby Franke's chart, because your ability to be reliable and secure is threatened by a whole lot of things, by social exclusion. Your potential partner is going to be treated differently when she's with you at a party or something, right? And you speak up about the political candidate that everybody else likes, right? Or, if you don't pretend to smile and when everybody praises something that you know is a lie, right? The approval of her friends, her family, right? You're also gonna get targeted by institutions if you push hard enough. If you push hard enough in the wrong place, you're gonna get targeted by Child Protective Services, by the IRS, by police, by things that seem even supernatural. There's a whole targeted individual movement out there that'll tell you all about that. There are so many examples of that in every part of life. And that's standard procedure. Jody just did it in a more aggressive way, more extreme ways, working within an already extreme subsection of society, which is Mormonism. By the way, I haven't talked about it much, but Mormonism has a polygamy culture. Not everybody, obviously, in the Mormon church is polygamous, but there are these sects and what do they call them? Clans, polygamous clans, right? Where you have all these wives, all these women, and you with one man. Now, what this really is just neo-feudalism, in the sense that, again, it's this top dog, it's this alpha, it's this guy who has all these resources, and you, as a regular guy, are shut out of having these resources. And it's very much controlled by who you're related to, your connections. That's who's going to get more wives, who's going to get the more desirable wives. Now, remember, with Mormonism and polygamy, this isn't just about having children and being married to her and just sleeping with her. It's about her money, where her money is going, her time, her resources. There's a huge money aspect, and really I didn't even find a place within these 3 episodes to insert that. But that's a story in itself. The straight up financial fraud in the Mormon church, how much money they get from these people. There's a whole Mormon bank. It's a bank. But the point is, the church leaders and the chosen ones within these polygamous clans, they get all the resources. I think we should remember that, because that symbol, although it's not outward in our world, our everyday non-Mormon world, that's there though. That hierarchy is there in the minds of the people. Okay? Now, switching gears a bit, kind of getting back to the individual and the man. I'm glad this documentary pointed out the angle that pornography addiction was used as the main weapon, the main reason to keep these men in line. That was the way to get them. And this is because, of course, Mormonism is very Puritan. It's very, that's a no-no. They take that very seriously. And she would say these things, don't you see this is destroying your family, to these guys who are watching porn. The crazy thing is, actually, I think she's right. Because here's the thing, it's not that it's a sin to watch it, or it's that destructive to watch it, but then you claim you don't want to do this, and then you feel the need to confess that, right? So you tell somebody, you tell your wife. How do you think she feels? Right? Because if no one knows, then that's one. It's a personal thing, it's one thing, but it is a big deal if they believe it's a big deal, and it's such a important part of how she feels, her validation as your wife, then yeah, this actually is destroying your family. Except it's not the one little release of lust and then the guilt that is destroying these people's families. It's these men being cogs in a greater machine that is destroying the family. That's the reason they go to watch the porn in the first place. It's because there's no satisfaction for him out here. There are all these things locking him down. That's the thing about sexuality. You can't do it by compulsion. You can only do it through selfish desire. That's the only way it works. For a man, you know. I can only say that, you know. Hey, nothing new though, right? The sex is used to keep us all in line. Men fall in line and they get doctorates, they get PhDs, they get the right car, they go towards the consensus, they dress the way they think they should dress because they want an attractive woman. I ain't mad at you. I know, I get it. As far as in Kevin Franke's case, he was singled out as an example of what to do. Because now, why was he given all that praise, that love bombing? Why? Because, as others have pointed out, Jody wanted Ruby's platform. So this is the way she kind of got in, like a parasite. You know, she latched on. And first, she made things really good between them by praising Kevin so much. And Jody told him he's a man. And it felt so good to him, as he said, right? He enjoyed the praise. He said, the best was seeing how my wife looked at me. And this is the thing. This is, he was specifically targeted. It was individually targeted, catered exactly to him, that manipulation. He talks about the way there was passion now, right, in their marriage. And then that was all due to Jody approving and validating Kevin as a real man. Well, of course, their marriage was better now. Not because Kevin was more of a man. He's the same Kevin. But Ruby saw him as a better man because, again, go back to her chart and her values, the external approval of her man was now through the roof. Because what Jody represented to Ruby, she represented the entire Mormon church and the entire approval of the society that she sees as the authority. Right? The footage they showed was really good at showing this. He actually had more confidence. Because this is what he always wanted to be like, right? He felt like the alpha. So, and this is the funny thing is, all that changed is he believed it. And he started to act like it. That little walk he does in the kitchen, that's what it's all about, man. And then, when that happens, and you're getting the warmth, you're getting the affection, then you have more energy to go work 10, 12 hours a day, to work hard, to be there for your kids. That's the kind of batteries that power each other. That's the whole point. That's how it works. And I remember seeing Kevin's pictures a year ago when I found out about the story. I had no idea who these people were, and I was immediately disgusted. I was disgusted because when I saw Kevin, because I thought this guy just radiates, exudes fake masculinity. He thinks he's a man. This guy's not a man. You could see he's very small. This is, I think, the exact words I said a year ago. My initial reaction was correct. I see now, except now, I actually got more compassion for him because I understand how this happened. I didn't know his story before. And I saw in this docuseries that those pictures that I saw a year ago, they were from this time period where he's feeling like he's doing all the right things. He's getting the validation, right? He's trying. They're both getting the validation externally. The reason I'm hard on men is because I'm being hard on myself. For me, the real anger is for the non-abusers. The abusers, you already know what I think of them. You know how I think they should be dealt with. But it's not the believers or the non-believers that I have a problem with for making it happen. It's us for letting it happen who should be doing better. Like people who are largely non-manipulated, but yet inactive against the manipulators. The people who are watching. The person that I was for years. And I wasn't completely innocent either, right? So So this is where my anger comes from. I just don't want to alienate people too much. I'm willing to do it, but as a guy coming across this, I think there are a lot of reasons to be put off by me, but it's coming from a place of love here for the masculine principle, because not only should we do better, but it's great to do better. It's going to be so rewarding, and it's very achievable. Now, in the story as we go on, we're getting to the part now where Jody's haunted by the evil spirits. I talked about this last episode. This was the pretext for moving in with the Franke family. Jody, she built up this whole thing that Jody was haunted by the evil spirits. She had hooded men coming. Satan had it out for her, okay? This therapist that is now going to move in with the family that she's offering therapy to and doing a online class with. Now, according to Jessie Hildebrand, Jody's niece, Jessie, who lived with Jody for years, she was raised by Jody, duct tape every single day, sleeping outside at times, not allowed to speak. Jessie was like not allowed to even speak to people or be in the same rooms as other children that was living there as Jody's children. Jody has 2 children. Okay, terrifying thought. So Jessie said that Jody actually believed in these spirits for real. Like, she for real believed that Jesus was working through her literally. Okay, I will, for objectivity, just say that that's what she says. I say it was all a ploy to get Ruby to sleep with Jody at night, which is what it seems like it was all about. It was all about separating her from her husband. That classic MO that we saw Adam Paul Steed, talk about how his ex-wife was separated from him because of Jody Hildebrand, and other men have said this. Now, what happens is naturally when a couple gets separated, the relationship gets worse, right? So he became the whipping boy now. He got all of that praise and approval, and then he got it ripped away, okay? The initial praise was withdrawn. Why? Of course, in order to make their relationship fall apart. Kevin and Ruby. And then that's when this docuseries goes down that path of wondering, some conjecture whether or not Jody and Ruby were in a romantic relationship together, whether this was like a lesbian thing. Again, I think it's misdirection. I don't believe this was desire. I don't believe it was jealousy. No. She didn't want Ruby to herself as a lover. No. She wanted the man out of the picture because Kevin does not have child abuse tendencies. He's not an abuser. That's very clear to me when I watch him. So what Jody did, she got rid of the biggest threat to her hegemony of power, her abusive cult fantasy, right? She had this vision, what she wanted to do, and Kevin did not fit into it. He needed to leave. Kevin's not an abuser. And that's part of the reason why I personally blame him the most. It's unforgivable that you saw this shit happening and allowed it to happen slowly, and then very rapidly. Now, then of course, as this descends, they got rid of Chad, the next oldest male, right? Through his sexuality. Again, same thing. And this happened because Jody prepped him so much. All those lessons about pornography and lust, and getting this guy to believe that this was actually evil what he was doing, right? Chad actually believed her. So imagine this guy being like 16, 17, wanting to do the right thing, being a good kid, what he thinks is being a good kid, and actually believing that it's wrong for him to be kissing these girls at this time and experimenting. So what does he do? He tells Jody, he confesses to Jody, and then Jody tells him to confess to his mom. Why did she do that? Well, we know by the outcome that Jody had prepared Ruby's reaction to that. It was all a ploy that I'll explain. By telling Ruby and telling this whole family over time that male lust was the work of Satan, that being around that energy it makes you susceptible to demonic possession. She told these women that it is that lustful energy that is destroying their marriages, not what was really destroying or at that point I shouldn't say destroying, but the reasons for the issues that these women were coming to Jody with. Jody presented those issues as being the men's lustful energy, their watching of pornography, their basically those two things, their sexual needs. Whereas the real answers were more nuanced, more complicated, more like I presented them, and having more to do with them not feeling like real men because they're within this greater system and they're not truly expressing themselves. They don't truly have shared individuated values. It's just a whole lot of being forced into a box. Okay? So she prepped Ruby for this. So when Ruby hears that her son was doing all of this while Jody was sleeping in the house, it clicked in her head. And Chad says this, it's like it clicked in her head that his mom was totally distraught, saying that this is the reason that all of this happened with Jody and her family was falling apart. Well, we now know that why this was the case. This was the demonic possession angle from the start. Ruby makes the connection that it's because of her oldest son and her husband, of course. And that's the reason that Jody's sick and haunted and can't sleep at night. And she thinks that she made this deduction by herself. That's what makes it most effective. Ruby doesn't see that those guardrails were set up to influence her thinking to reach a specific final outcome. And that, by the way, is how high-level mind control works. High-level mind control is not your basic propaganda on the news that reaches the lowest common denominator, but it's the influencing of philosophy, academic thought, countercultures, even freedom movements. It's just guardrails. Ideas and information, they're like an unstoppable, powerful river. You can't really stop people. You can't put a wall on it and stop an idea. You can't stop the water. Blatant lies and propaganda are not going to get the job done. So then what these people do, and we're talking like genius level psychologists, and they view the human species as their clay, like canvas to perform their artistic alchemy on. These people do this professionally, right? And think about who they are. They'd be being employed by the richest and most powerful people in the world. Think about if you're the richest and most powerful person in the world. Your number one expense, what you'd spend the most money on, it would be to secure your wealth and power for the future. That's what this is. So the way they do this, and they control people's minds, is they make that river of thinking and ideas and enlightenment, they make it go where they want through incremental underwater barriers. Think of it like these walls underwater that aren't supposed to stop the river. They just move it ever so slightly here and there. They redirect the water. They trace the flow of the water, the way they would trace the path of your life. What are your dreams, your desires? Collecting all that information, right? Reading patterns, reading your habits. And then they would angle those barriers in a way that eventually you can cut that river off. You could make the river flow 90 degrees. You could split it into forks and completely dissipate it as if you put a wall there. You could essentially stop that unstoppable flow. But from the surface, you would never know that that river was being manipulated at all. You would just say that's how the river flows naturally. And the underwater barriers, they would be called conspiracy theory. People would say, show me those barriers. No one's ever seen them. That's just nature. That's just how they go, right? No, it's being done on purpose by someone to get a particular outcome. Jody Hildebrandt showed us in a microcosm how that's done. That's the technique she employed. I got 120 other episodes all about this breakwater method and how it's used in all these aspects of human life. That's why I'm locking in so much on the Ruby Franke story, because it totally hits close to home. Now, after this whole thing with Chad, when Kevin comes home, this is what happens.
When I came in the door, she was intense. And she just bluntly said, our marriage is in serious jeopardy because of you, Kevin, because of your selfishness, because of your lustful thoughts and behavior that you've been hiding. I'm trying to rise up to the measure that God wants me to be and to do the work he wants for me to do, and you keep holding me and Jody back. I want you to leave the house. I want you to do it immediately. I don't want you to have any contact with me or the children.
What did you say?
I just said, okay. Okay. One by one, I had the kids come in, and I sat them down, and I told them, I'm going to go away for a time, and I'm going to work on myself so that I can come back to the family and be the dad that you deserve.
How did they react?
Emotionally. One of my children, the look in her eyes, I cannot. It was a pleading.
First of all, before I even say anything, I have compassion for Kevin. I know he was in an impossibly difficult situation. I know it's easy for me to say all this stuff. I was not born into the Mormon church. I'm not in the Mormon community. I don't have 6 children. Who doesn't have the life experiences that I've had and had made me the man that I am today. So to the guys in general who watch this, my venom for men, my high standards for masculinity, it's only because we got actually the power to change things. I hate to see people with their head down. I hate to see slavery and powerlessness and all of this stuff. Also, if I were just to batter people, right? If you were just to hear me talk shit like, you need to be better, you need to be a man, you need to be tougher, well, that's what a lot of our fathers did to us, and it didn't work, right? Like, not my dad, but a lot of us, that's what we experienced, and it just doesn't work. And that's the same thing Jody did to these men. She's, she got them at their most vulnerable, and she says, well, you're watching all this porn, you're a failure, be better. And all it does is just reinforces those feelings of failure, being a failure and being inadequate. I know, I get it. So it can't be me telling you this. It can't be Mark Passio or like a drill sergeant type. That talking to, that harshness, that disciplinarian in you, it's got to come from you. If you're a male and you're looking up to me, that should only be a transitional period. You should only look up to another man for like a short period of time until you grow up, as you work on yourself to surpass me. In 2019, 2020, I looked up to Mark Passio, Tyson Fury, Michael Tsarion at the time, and it was a transitional period. I got love and respect for a whole lot of men, but I got no idols. I don't look up to anyone. No men. I look forward. I don't look up, I look forward. And I want to be shoulder to shoulder with these people that I respect and love, right? So it's not me that can tell you, because it doesn't work. You have to be the one to tell you that the great man, the heroic man, it's within yourself. You are your own standard. You don't try to measure yourself up to someone else. You take that just to boost you, and you have to be the standard. By the way, I've pointed out here in this episode about how the shaming and the guilt of watching pornography is complete nonsense, right? It's a control tactic. These men weren't actually doing anything wrong. So it sounds like I'm defending porn, and I think porn is completely healthy and normal. I don't actually. I don't. But for this reason. As a man, if you're watching porn, you're taken out of the main character role. And the main character role is a absolute requirement for the development of healthy masculinity. That's all it is. That's the only problem for me with it. Sex is super personal. And the reason it's so important to men is because from the masculine perspective, that's like a concentrated act of someone validating your self-worth through the affection and the warmth. So it's like really important to us that we're the ones being validated, not somebody who you're seeing as just being more than you. That's the problem. It's like you're taking yourself out of the vision. That's the toxic thing about it. For me, it has zero to do with masturbation. Masturbation gets a big 2 thumbs up from me. For men, the same as women, it's okay if you disagree. Like I said, right? Sexuality is super personal and subjective. I'm just telling you how I see it. Nothing wrong with masturbating. Pornography, I think, is a population control technique. I think it's eugenics. I think it's an attack on masculinity. But only because it just replaces your dreams, your visualization, your fantasy with someone else's. Why would you do that? It's all yours to have, so fight for it. That's like the whole motto. All the best things in the world are yours to experience. Just requires a lot of action, right? That's kind of a foreshadowing of next week's show, because we're going to talk about the absolute best qualities of a woman, of women, and how women inspire action in men, right? But this is the finale now, so we're going to, for the finale, yes, I got compassion for the guy. He's not the devil, but we're going to dig into Kevin Franke, okay? This guy, after being told he's leaving the house and he's to have no contact with his wife and children, what does he do? I just said, okay. He just said, okay. And then you see him, he gets emotional talking about one of my children. To look in her eyes, it was just pleading. That's what he says, right? It's clear that it was the youngest. It was the youngest girl, and even if not, it was the one that needed him the most. And what did he do? He left. You cannot do this. This is what ruins the world. It makes the vibrational life wave, life force of the universe collapse. This makes a child lose faith in love, lose faith in their parents. It makes them think there's no benevolence in the universe. This is what makes people not believe in God. When they really need somebody and they fucking walk out on them. Even if they still believe in God on the surface, their concept of God becomes fucking twisted. It becomes something perverse. Just like Ruby and Jody's concept of God. Do you guys see the cycle here? This is what does it. This is the reason we've got people doing these things to each other. At some point, these fucking horrific women were a little girl just like that. What do you think made them be psychotic, you know? Jody, I don't know, because some people are just psychopaths from, primary psychopaths, but I doubt that's even what Jody is, but it's beside the point. The point is, where was he? He was supposed to respond emotionally then. Sometimes it is a time to fucking get emotional as a man. He gets choked up now talking about it. Why didn't he get choked up then? She's pleading for him over there to not leave. That's the time to match that. Connect with his daughter and tell her that he's not leaving her. He's not going to leave. Even if he get the fucking cops called on him and get taken to jail. That's better, because then at least your family would see the injustice accurately. Why don't we force these fucking wrongdoers to look like wrongdoers? Why do we take on all the guilt and shame and fucking act like they're guinea pigs and they're dogs? Instead, the guy becomes complicit with the abusers of his children through his compliance. He accepted the morality of the abusers. That's what we all fucking do. So I've maintained this from the start. Kevin, I blame the most out of everyone. He was the closest non-abuser, meaning he had the greatest potential to change behaviors. And he did not have Jody and Ruby's abusive tendencies. It is the failure of masculinity that allowed this to happen. He allowed this to happen. That's a message to all of us, men and women, who are neither abusers nor victims of abuse. We play the key role here. We decide what happens. But then Kevin, of course, expressed the regret, right? He wished he could go back into that moment and stop it. And I obviously believe him, and I appreciate it. Okay, so, you know, I've done the same too. Like, I've failed pathetically in many ways in the past. And Kevin's not done, right? His story's not over. It's not just that you failed and now you're done. It's not what I'm saying. Do we not take anything away from the story of Jesus Christ and redemption? The cross is a symbol of capital punishment, right? The man was wrongly put to death by the government. Now, why did the people who put those nails in him and watch him die there, what did they do? They accepted the morality of the abusers, of the government. Now, this is all kind of ironic, right? Me connecting it to Christ. That's what Jody did. She made her ideas tied in with biblical implications and grandiose proportions. But I'm being serious. Is that male, inadequacy, that inaction, is that not what killed Jesus Christ? It is. But that's the thing. We don't have to dwell on the guilt and shame because Jesus Christ was resurrected, right? So we're in this world. The guy died for our sins. He was resurrected. So he's living with all of us, as everybody who believes says, right? I agree. Okay, everybody, we're on the same page. But the cross is still used today. People are still wrongly put to death by governments. People are still abused in front of your eyes. People are still framed. People are still slandered and demonized. And the same structure is in effect using the cross in a way that is actually worse. Right? Because it's more complicated. It's more nuanced. People don't even fucking know. But are we taking action? Or are we saying, okay, like Kevin Franke, that's what we're fucking doing. So, don't look up to Jesus. Help him. The man needs your help. He's doing fucking work out here. And where are you? The children need your help. They need our help. It's not anybody else's story that you're living in. It's your story. Remember? See how it all connects? Why don't we start chopping the fucking crosses down? Because the crosses are still used. There are plenty of people being martyred, and really, you don't have to go any further than child abuse, which is all over the place, right? Now, if I'm not successful as this, right? Okay, so then there's this tyrannical government. There's all kinds of tyranny, whether it's coming from the government or it's coming from fucking TikTok. There's a bunch of poison and mind control and toxicity that is all over the place, right? Attacking our children. Now, I'm this guy with the fucking axe chopping the crosses. Now, what's going to happen if I do that? I'm going to get nailed on the cross next to Jesus, right? Guys, I got no delusions of grandeur. I'm no Jody, I'm really just tapping in to all the believers, all the people that resonate with this story of Jesus. I'm very down to earth. I don't need to go biblical. But this is my story, and this is my story of redemption, my life, and reaching for love and beauty, and bettering the people around me. That's what I'm trying to do. So if I'm nailed on a cross next to Yeshua, what's going to happen then? I'll be shoulder to shoulder with the guy. It's exactly what I was saying. And if enough of us do that, then the cross is no longer going to be used. Do we not see that the more you pray and pray and pray, it's not anything against praying, but if you're lacking action, what are you doing? What are we doing, guys? And I'll go further into this thing, because instead of me being next to him, there's two thieves next to him, right? The two thieves nailed next to Jesus Christ. What does that tell us? It tells us that the only people who are taking action and taking risks are the people who are doing evil, and they're the ones getting the punishment. Like Jody being in prison right now. She had a lot of confidence. She built all these fucking connections. She was really effective. She generated so much action, but she was psychopathic and abusive. Why can we not match the will and action level of the psychopaths and abusers? Why do so many of us seem like we fucking can't get out of a wet paper bag? Where's the strength? Where's the rage? Where's the life? Where's the virility? See, as long as we let deranged criminals be the ones who live out their narratives, their stories, the system's gonna crucify them sooner or later when they go too far, because they are. And we are going to do what? We're going to accept the morality of the controllers. We're going to say, hell yeah, punish them, send her to jail, right? All of this happened, it was happening, now we found out, send her to jail. Diddy goes to jail, R. Kelly goes to jail, all of this stuff. Fine. Then when Jesus Christ comes around and tries to wake men up to reject the morality of their time, he's going to get framed again as the wrongdoer, and he's going to get silenced. And Kevin Franke was silenced, just like his oldest son Chad. They were framed as evildoers, and they weren't. They weren't sexual deviants. They were normal guys, okay, non-abusive. They were framed as wrongdoers even though they were one. And Kevin, by accepting the false charges as truth, by walking out of that house, by saying, okay, and thus accepting the inversion of morality by the wrongdoers, accepting the projection and inversion of guilt, the transfer of guilt from the guilty to the innocent, by doing that, you actually do become the guilty. You do become guilty. When you're being separated from your family, when the innocent are being targeted and manipulated, when you're being told that your worth is coming from outside of yourself, all of these things are happening. Silence is violence. Silence is violence. If you accept their fucking bullshit morality, if you don't risk everything to say no, you're just as bad as them. That's the answer. Kevin Franke made his choice on that. I've made mine, and you're next to make that choice. Thank you. And next week, no rants. Next week we're going to talk about Sherry. Okay, we're going to talk about the women. We're going to talk about what gets us out of this. But really necessary, I think, this episode. Really necessary. I'm curious on your thoughts. I don't mean to be theatrical. Me ranting, it's not even an accurate reenactment of how this shit makes me feel, because like sometimes it just blows my mind, like the world we live in and how we're literally just watching it happen. When I watch this guy talk about this, I fucking feel it. This weighs very heavy on me. Then when I talk about it, then I'm hearing myself talk, so I don't even get as angry. So I try to like recreate the anger, but it's all very real what you're seeing, and that's the issue. I think is that we're not showing enough of ourselves for real. If we were just more open and honest, I think as men, we'd get a lot of rude awakenings. If we just stop fucking pretending and put the mirror up to us and like ask the world, like, what am I? And then we'll see those reflections, and they'll show us and hopefully motivate us to measure up, but not measure up to somebody else, measure up to ourselves. We're the standard. Okay, we can do more. Our potential is the standard to measure ourselves up to. Thanks so much. I love you guys. See you next week on This Week in Tyranny.
And do you have a sense for the way that Jody dealt with married couples, and specifically the way that she divided husbands from women, isolated the men, got everyone to accuse the men as being child abusers when most of the time they weren't, and then basically just wrecked marriages and wrecked so many men's lives. Are you familiar with that aspect of what Jodi did?
Oh yeah, I'm very familiar with that. And I mean, she has this way of triangulating. Someone has to be the bad guy. There's always, it's like textbook. Like there's the perpetrator, the victim, and then the savior. She's the savior. And so she finds the perpetrator. It's usually the husband. He's the narcissist. Everyone's a narcissist. I remember like hearing her talk about her clients, and every man she saw was a narcissist, according to her.